4 years ago, my wife began losing her memory. Everyone said it was early dementia until last Thursday when my son and I took her to see a neurologist. My son stepped outside to take a phone call, and the moment the door closed, the doctor leaned toward me with trembling hands and whispered something that froze me in place. "You need to get your wife away from your son. Immediately." Before he could explain another word, the door opened and my son walked back in. And suddenly everything changed when I discovered what was inside the briefcase he always carried. Hello everyone, welcome to this story. Before we continue, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I love seeing how far these stories travel. Quick note, some details are dramatized for storytelling and educational value, and any similarity to real people or places is purely coincidental. My wife began losing her memory about 4 years ago. Last Thursday, October 17th, I took her to see a neurologist in Olympia. When my son stepped out to take a call, the doctor's hands began to tremble. "My name is Marcus Brennan. I am 65 years old, a retired architect, who spent 4 decades restoring historic buildings across the Pacific Northwest. Buildings that outlasted their creators, their stories preserved in every beam and cornerstone. I thought I understood how to read structural damage, how to spot the cracks that warned of collapse. I never imagined I would need those skills to examine my own family. Catherine sat beside me in the examination room at St. Catherine Medical Center, 65 years old, her hands folded in her lap like a patient child. She had been the most capable pediatric nurse at Cascade Memorial for 30 years, a woman who could calm screaming infants and terrified parents with equal grace. Now she could not remember what month it was. My son Ethan had driven us here in his black Audi, 40 years old, with the polished confidence of a man who managed other people's money, expensive cologne announcing his presence before he entered any room, a watch that caught the light, and a leather briefcase he never let leave his sight. Dr. Victor Hayes was younger than I had expected for someone so highly recommended. 54, with wire-rimmed glasses that could not hide the shadows under his eyes. A neurologist who carried some private weight I could not yet identify. Ethan's phone had not rung. I was certain of it. The room had been silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Yet he had glanced at his pocket, smiled apologetically, and excused himself to take the call. The moment that door clicked shut, Dr. Hayes transformed. Have you ever had a moment when the world you thought you knew cracked open and something monstrous crawled out? That is what happened in that sterile examination room. With antiseptic air burning my nostrils, and my wife sitting beside me unaware that her own son might be slowly killing her. "Mr. Brennan," he whispered, leaning forward so urgently his wire-rimmed glasses nearly slipped off his nose. "You need to get your wife away from your son. Immediately." My mouth went dry. A metallic taste flooded my tongue. "What are you talking about?" "The medication patterns, the decline, timeline, the symptoms." His eyes darted to the door. "I have seen this before. Drug-induced cognitive impairment. It can mimic dementia perfectly." His voice dropped even lower. "And it is reversible, if you act now." My hands gripped the leather armrests until my knuckles whitened. The room felt colder than it had moments ago. Catherine hummed softly beside me, lost in whatever fog had claimed her mind. How long, I started to ask. The door swung open. "Sorry that took so long." Ethan stood in the doorway, that same concerned smile he had worn for months fixed on his face. His knuckles were white around the handle of his briefcase. "Is everything all right, Doctor?" Dr. Hayes straightened instantly, his professional mask snapping back into place. "Just discussing the test results with your father." But I had seen it. Ethan's eyes had flicked to the doctor's hands, still trembling slightly against the desk. And in that moment, I saw something behind my son's mask. A calculation so cold it stopped my heart. He knew the doctor had warned me. And now we were both trapped in this room together, pretending the unthinkable had not just been spoken aloud. My son smiled at me, and I smiled back, and somewhere beneath that exchange of false warmth, a war had already begun. But let me tell you how we got here. How a woman who once ran a pediatric ward with precision and grace became someone who could not remember her own daughter's birthday. And how a devoted son's helping hands might have been the very thing destroying her. Catherine and I had been married for 42 years. We raised 2 children in a house I restored with my own hands at 1847 Maple Grove Avenue in Olympia. She spent 30 years as a pediatric nurse at Cascade Memorial, the kind of woman who could calm a screaming infant and comfort terrified parents in the same breath. I spent my career traveling across the Pacific Northwest, bringing historic buildings back from the brink of demolition. The forgetting started in April 2021. Small things at first. A missed appointment. A recipe she had made 100 times, suddenly foreign. I told myself it was age. We were both in our 60s. These things happened. Then Ethan stepped in. "Dad, you travel too much," he had said, his voice so reasonable it made my chest ache with gratitude. "Let me help with Mom. I can work remotely. She should not be alone." And I let him. God help me, I let him. I need you to understand something. When you love someone, when you have trusted them since they took their first steps, you do not see the monster. You see the child who caught fireflies in mason jars, who cried when his goldfish died, who hugged you on Father's Day and told you that you were his hero. That blindness, it nearly cost me my wife's life. Because while I was away restoring a Victorian courthouse in Tacoma, Ethan was asking questions. "Dad, you and Mom are not getting any younger," he had said 6 months ago, leaning against my kitchen counter with a cup of coffee I had not seen him make. "We should talk about power of attorney. What happens if you cannot make decisions? This house must be worth a fortune now," he had commented another day, running his fingers along the original crown molding I had restored myself. "What do you think? 600,000 more." He photographed my antiques. Every piece of furniture Catherine and I had collected over 4 decades, documented like evidence. For insurance purposes, Dad, he had explained. You never know. But the worst part, the detail that still haunts my memory, was the pills. "Do not worry about Mom's medications," he had told me. "I have got it handled. You focus on your projects." And I did. I focused on my projects while my son focused on my wife. Catherine's decline accelerated after Ethan took over her care. The woman who had once completed the Sunday crossword in ink now stared at the empty boxes like they were written in a foreign language. She forgot our daughter Lily's birthday. She forgot our anniversary. She forgot the names of grandchildren she had helped raise. I blamed the disease. I blamed myself for being away so often. I never blamed Ethan. Until the night before that doctor's appointment. I had come downstairs for water and found him in the kitchen sorting Catherine's medications into the weekly pill organizer. The colored compartments clicked as he dropped tablets into each slot with practiced precision. But it was not his efficiency that stopped me cold in the doorway. It was his face. His fingers lingered over certain tablets. A slight smile touched his lips. Not warmth, satisfaction. And his eyes, when he thought no one was watching, held a calculation that turned my blood to ice. My architect's mind had spent 40 years reading buildings, understanding how structures fail. Standing in my own kitchen doorway, I finally saw the crack in my family's foundation, and I realized it was not Catherine who was broken. It was something far worse. That memory of Ethan in the kitchen haunted me as I sat in Dr. Hayes' examination room the next morning. October 17th, the day everything changed. Catherine sat beside me, her hands folded in her lap. Ethan stood by the window with his arms crossed, that leather briefcase at his feet, like a loyal dog. Doctor. Hayes opened a folder and began the test that would prove just how much of my wife had been stolen. "Mrs. Brennan, what year is it?" Catherine's brow furrowed. She looked at me, then back at the doctor. 2021. I gripped the armrests of my chair until my knuckles whitened. "Who is the current president?" A longer pause. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for the answer written on the walls. "Obama. No, wait. Bush." Dr. Hayes made a note, his pen scratching against paper with increasing urgency. "Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" Catherine stared at him blankly. 193. Do you know what it is like to watch someone you have loved for 42 years struggle to remember basic facts? To see the woman who once managed complex pediatric protocols, who remembered every child patient's name, who held your hand through her own cancer treatment, dissolve into confusion before your eyes. That examination room became a torture chamber, and every wrong answer was another nail in a coffin I did not yet know was being built. "I'm going to say 3 words," Dr. Hayes continued gently. "Apple, penny, table. Can you repeat those back to me?" Apple Catherine said slowly. "Penny. And—" She trailed off, her face crumpling. "I'm sorry. I cannot remember the last one." "That is all right, Mrs. Brennan. We will come back to it." But 5 minutes later, when he asked again, she could not recall any of them. The antiseptic smell of the room burned my nostrils. I could taste metal on my tongue, the flavor of fear. Catherine's hands twisted in her lap, and I wanted to reach over and hold them, but I could not move. I was frozen, watching my wife fail test after test, while our son stood calmly by the window. Dr. Hayes set down his pen and looked at his notes for a long moment. "Who manages your wife's medications, Mr. Brennan?" Before I could answer, Ethan's smooth voice cut in from the window. "I do. I organize Mom's weekly pill case. Blood pressure, cholesterol, her vitamins. I have been handling it since I moved back to help." And that was when I saw it. Dr. Hayes's pen stopped moving. He looked up at Ethan, still standing by the window, still so composed, still so helpful, and something shifted in the neurologist's expression. It was there for only a moment. Recognition, then alarm, then a careful blankness that told me he was hiding something. "This decline pattern," Dr. Hayes said slowly, his voice carefully neutral, "is progressing faster than typical age-related deterioration. I would like to review her complete medication history." "Of course," Ethan said. "Whatever you need, doctor." But Dr. Hayes was not looking at Ethan anymore. He was looking at me, and in that moment I saw a warning he could not speak aloud. Not with Ethan standing right there watching us both with that patient, helpful smile. The doctor knew something. I was certain of it now. He had seen something in Catherine's case that frightened him. Something about the medications. Something about the pattern of her decline. And whatever it was, he could not tell me. Not yet. Not with my son in the room guarding that briefcase like it contained the secrets of the universe. I did not know then just how right I was. The drive home should have taken 30 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. And every second of it, I watched my son unravel in ways I had never seen before. Ethan's fingers drummed against the leather steering wheel in a nervous rhythm that never stopped. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds, always checking as if he expected someone to be following us. The briefcase sat wedged between his seat and the center console, and twice I saw him reach down to touch it, reassuring himself it was still there. "You okay, son?" I asked, as he checked the mirror for the 5th time in 2 minutes. "You seem tense." "Fine, Dad. Just traffic." But there was no traffic. The roads through Olympia were nearly empty in the late afternoon light. Ethan's cologne filled the enclosed space of the Audi thick and cloying, and I found myself pressing closer to the window, just to breathe. In the back seat, Catherine hummed softly to herself, staring out at the passing trees with the vacant contentment of someone who had forgotten why we had gone to the doctor in the first place. She had already forgotten the tests, the questions she could not answer, the look on Dr. Hayes's face. But I had not forgotten. I would never forget. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love do something ordinary, something they have done 1,000 times, and suddenly seen it with new eyes, seen it for what it really might be?" That is what happened when we got home, and Ethan walked straight to the kitchen, straight to the medication cabinet, with the efficiency of a man following a routine I had never questioned, a routine I now could not stop watching. His hands moved with practiced precision. The weekly pill organizer sat on the counter, its colored compartments like a rainbow of trust. Blue for morning, yellow for noon, green for evening. I had seen Catherine take pills from those compartments hundreds of times. I had thanked God that our son was so devoted, so organized, so willing to help when I could not be there. Now I watched those same hand-sort tablets with new horror pooling in my stomach. "Mom, time for your evening pills," Ethan called out, his voice shifting to that warm, caring tone that used to fill me with gratitude. "I've got everything ready." Catherine shuffled into the kitchen, still wearing her coat from the doctor's visit. She smiled at Ethan with such complete trust that my heart cracked. "Such a good boy," she murmured, accepting the tablets from his palm. "What would I do without you?" She swallowed them with a sip of water. Every single one, without question, without hesitation, with the faith of a mother who had no reason to doubt her own child. I stood in the doorway and felt something cold settle in my chest. A suspicion I could not prove, a horror I could not name. My wife had just swallowed pills that might be destroying her mind, and I had done nothing to stop her. Because I did not know, not yet, not for certain. Thank you, sweetheart. Catherine patted Ethan's cheek with the same hand that used to check his temperature when he was sick. My son smiled back, that warm, devoted smile I had seen for months, but I was not looking at his smile anymore. I was looking at the briefcase he had carried into the kitchen still clutched against his side. I am going to take a shower, Ethan announced, setting the briefcase on the counter for the first time all day. You two relax. He disappeared upstairs. The water started running, and I stood alone in my kitchen staring at that leather briefcase, knowing I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. I waited until I heard the bathroom door close until the water started running through the old pipes. Then I moved toward that briefcase like a man walking to his own execution, knowing that whatever I found inside would change everything. The leather was smooth under my trembling fingers. The brass clasps clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo through the silent kitchen. Inside, I found exactly what I expected. A laptop, financial papers, expensive pens, the ordinary contents of an ordinary businessman's bag. But my architect's mind had spent 40 years reading structures. I knew when something did not add up. This briefcase was heavier than its contents should allow. I ran my fingers along the interior lining, pressing gently, searching. Near the bottom beneath the laptop sleeve, I felt it. A slight give in the leather, a seam that should not exist. The hidden compartment opened with a whisper of velvet. Black velvet soft as sin, lining a space barely larger than my hand. And nestled inside, wrapped in a silk handkerchief like some precious treasure, was an amber prescription bottle. My heart stopped. I lifted it with fingers that would not stay steady. The label was partially torn, perhaps deliberately, but I could read enough. Diazepam. And below that, in smaller letters that destroyed my world, veterinary use only. What kind of person hides medicine in a secret compartment? What kind of son wraps poison in silk like it is a treasure? I will tell you what kind. The kind who knows exactly what he is doing. The kind who planned this. The kind who looked his own mother in the eye every single day for nearly 4 years and watched her mind dissolve, knowing he was the one dissolving it. Veterinary use only, for animals. My son had been giving my wife medicine meant for animals. Bile rose in my throat. The metallic taste of rage and grief flooded my mouth. I thought of Catherine sitting in the next room, the pill she had just swallowed, the trust in her eyes when she looked at her devoted son. How long had he been doing this? 4 years of watching my wife disappear. Was it him? Was it always him? My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone trying to photograph the evidence. The bottle, the torn label, the hidden compartment with its velvet lining, the silk handkerchief that made this poison look like a gift. I photographed everything, checking each image to make sure it was clear, readable, undeniable. Then I returned each item to its exact position. The handkerchief folded precisely as I had found it. The bottle nestled in velvet. The compartment sealed. The laptop and papers arranged just so. The shower stopped. Footsteps creaked on the floor above. I closed the briefcase, positioned it exactly as Ethan had left it down to the angle of the handle. Then I walked calmly to my chair in the living room, picked up the newspaper, and pretended my entire world had not just collapsed. Catherine sat across from me, humming softly, her eyes vacant and trusting. She did not know. She had no idea her own son was slowly killing her. Ethan came downstairs, hair damp, smelling of soap and that expensive cologne. He glanced at the briefcase on the counter, at me with my newspaper, at his mother with her gentle smile. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Fine," I said. "Just tired." He nodded and picked up the briefcase, tucking it under his arm like it contained nothing more dangerous than spreadsheets. I had a choice to make. Confront him now with nothing but photographs and suspicion, or find proof so undeniable that no one could dismiss what he had done. I chose to wait. I chose to plan. I chose to become the one thing my son never expected. His enemy. I did not sleep that night. By 6 in the morning, I was pacing outside Olympia Public Library like a man possessed, waiting for the doors to open, waiting to learn exactly what my son had been feeding my wife for nearly 4 years. Emma Whitfield unlocked the library doors at 9 sharp. 31 years old, with copper-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, she was the kind of research librarian who could navigate medical databases as easily as card catalogs, and who knew when not to ask questions. "Mr. Brennan, are you all right?" she asked, taking in my rumpled clothes and sleepless eyes. "You look like you have not slept." "I need to research a medication," I said. "Diazepam, veterinary grade, what it does to humans." She did not ask why. She simply led me to a computer terminal and began typing. "Let me tell you what it feels like to read clinical studies about the poison destroying your wife's mind." Every symptom listed I had watched happen in real time. Every side effect described I had attributed to aging, to Alzheimer's, to fate. Drowsiness, confusion, memory loss, cognitive decline, virtually indistinguishable from dementia. I had been watching my son methodically erase my wife for nearly 4 years, and I had thanked him for his help. This says prolonged use in elderly patients causes symptoms virtually identical to Alzheimer's disease. Emma read quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Mr. Brennan, look at this." She pointed to a line that made my heart stop. "And if someone stopped taking it," my voice came out strangled, "cognitive improvement begins within 24 to 48 hours. She looked at me with eyes that understood more than I had said. Significant recovery over weeks. Catherine could be saved. The damage was reversible. But then Emma found something else. A clinical note buried in a pharmaceutical journal, suggesting users rotate dosages and combine with anticholinergics to avoid tolerance building. Sophisticated. Deliberate. My son had researched this carefully. I printed everything and walked 3 doors down from my house to visit Harold Pemberton. Everyone called him Hal, 76 years old, with the watchful stillness of a man who had spent 32 years as a Seattle homicide detective and had seen every way humans could betray each other. "Hal," I said, settling into his worn leather chair with bitter coffee I could barely taste. "Hypothetically speaking, if someone discovered a family member was poisoning another family member, what would be the smartest approach?" His experienced eyes sharpened. He set down his cup. "Get proof first. Document everything. Dates, times, observations." His voice carried the weight of decades of investigations. "And Marcus, be very careful. People who poison do not usually stop at one victim when they feel threatened." The warning settled into my bones like ice. What if no one believes me? What if they think I am the one who has lost his mind? Hal leaned forward. The guiltiest people often have sterling reputations, devoted sons, caring daughters. That is what makes them so dangerous. I walked home with his warning ringing in my ears and a plan forming in my mind. If the drug's effects could reverse within 48 hours, I could prove everything. All I needed was for Ethan to leave. And as if fate itself was conspiring with me, my phone buzzed. "Hey, Dad," the text read. "Heading to Seattle for a work thing. Will not be back until Tuesday. Can you handle Mom's meds this weekend?" My hands trembled as I typed back, "Of course. Safe travels." 3 days. I had 3 days to save my wife. 3 days to prove that my son was a monster. And as Hal's words echoed in my mind, I realized something else. If Ethan ever discovered what I was doing, I might not just be fighting for Catherine's life. I might be fighting for my own. The moment Ethan's black Audi disappeared around the corner, I moved. I had 72 hours to prove my son was a monster, and I was not going to waste a single minute. I retrieved Catherine's weekly pill organizer from the kitchen cabinet. The colored compartments gleamed under the fluorescent light, innocent as a child's toy. Blue for morning, yellow for noon, green for evening. I had seen this organizer 1,000 times. I had never looked at it closely. From my workshop, I brought the magnifying glass I had used for 40 years to examine architectural blueprints. The same tool that had helped me restore Victorian mansions and historic courthouses would now help me find the poison destroying my wife. I held the first tablet under the glass. Blood pressure medication. I recognized the shape and markings from when I had picked up her prescriptions myself years ago. The second pill was her cholesterol medicine, the third a legitimate vitamin. The fourth made my blood run cold. D's at 5. The marking was tiny, nearly invisible to the naked eye, but through my magnifying glass the letters were unmistakable. Diazepam, 5 milligrams. The poison. I had spent 40 years restoring buildings that others had given up on, structures that everyone said were too far gone to save. I had learned that rot can be cut away, that foundations can be reinforced, that what looks like decay can sometimes be reversed if you catch it in time. As I held that tiny white pill up to the light, I prayed my wife was not too far gone to save. From my workshop drawer, I retrieved a bottle of vitamin B tablets I had bought that morning. They were the same size, the same shape, the same innocent white color. I also retrieved my hobby knife, the one I used for delicate model work. I had to sift through 3 different bottles of vitamins to find a brand with a coating and size that nearly matched the diazepam. Even then, it was grueling work. My architect's hands ruined 6 tablets, crushing them into white dust, before I found the exact pressure needed to etch the tiny letters. Each stroke felt like I was carving a desperate lie to save the truth. "What are you doing in there?" Marcus Catherine called from the living room. "Just organizing some things, sweetheart. I will be right there." I finished the second forgery and held both vitamins up to my magnifying glass. Not perfect, but close enough to fool anyone not specifically looking for fraud. I placed them in the organizer exactly as Ethan had positioned the originals. The real pills went into a plastic bag, sealed, labeled with the date, evidence. When evening came, Catherine shuffled into the kitchen for her medication. I stood at the counter where my son usually stood. I opened the green compartment where my son usually opened it. I handed her the pills my son usually handed her. She swallowed them with a sip of water, smiled at me with those confused eyes, kissed my cheek with the same lips that had kissed me on our wedding day 42 years ago. "Thank you, sweetheart," she murmured. For the first time in 4 years, my wife had just taken vitamins instead of poison. I watched her settle into her chair and pick up her half-finished crossword puzzle. She stared at it blankly as she had every evening for years. The fog was still there. The damage was still done. But now the poison had stopped. The next 48 hours would tell me everything. Either the research was right and my wife would start coming back to me, or I was wrong about all of it and I had just accused my son of the unthinkable. I sat across from Catherine and pretended to read. But I was not reading. I was watching, waiting, praying I was not too late. Sunday morning, 36 hours since I swapped the pills. I woke at dawn heart-pounding and crept to the bedroom door to watch Catherine sleep. Was it my imagination, or did she look more peaceful than she had in months? I made coffee and waited. Every creak of the house sounded like an answer I was not sure I wanted to hear. Catherine came downstairs at 8, earlier than usual. She poured her own coffee without asking me where the cups were. Such a small thing. But she had been asking me where the cups were for 2 years. She settled into her chair with the crossword puzzle she had been staring at blankly for days. 7 across is Renaissance, she said suddenly, pen moving across the page. I've been staring at that one for days. How did I not see it? My heart stopped. I watched her fill in 3 more answers in the next 10 minutes. Clues that had defeated her all week fell like dominoes. "Marcus, have you seen my glasses?" She looked around, then paused. "Oh, wait, here they are, right where I left them." She found her own glasses, without wandering the house, without asking me to help, without that lost, confused look that had become her constant companion. Do you understand what it means to watch someone you love come back from the dead? To see sparks of recognition in eyes that have been empty for years. I sat across from Catherine that Sunday afternoon watching her work through that crossword puzzle, and I wept. Not openly. Just silent tears I wiped away before she could notice. My wife was still in there. She had been in there all along, screaming behind a chemical wall my son had built around her mind. "That congressman on TV," Catherine said, suddenly pointing at the screen. "He is the one who voted against the infrastructure bill last year. I remember reading about it." She remembered. She was connecting information. She was thinking. "Catherine," I said carefully, "how are you feeling today?" She frowned, considering the question with a clarity I had not seen in years. "Different," she said slowly, clearer somehow, like I slept better than I have in ages. I wrote everything down in a notebook. Times, behaviors, words spoken. Each entry was evidence. Each improvement documented proof of what had been stolen from us. By evening, Catherine had completed half the crossword puzzle. She remembered 3 neighbors by name. She asked me about a book she had been reading before her decline, a book I had packed away 2 years ago because seeing it on her nightstand broke my heart. I retrieved it from the closet and handed it to her. She opened it to the bookmarked page and began reading. Her eyes tracked the words. Her lips moved occasionally as she read a particularly engaging passage. My wife, reading, for the first time in 4 years. Hope flooded through me. Hope I had not felt since the day the forgetting started. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I was getting my wife back. But beneath that hope, something darker was building. Every crossword clue she completed was evidence. Every neighbor she remembered was proof. Every page she turned was another count in an indictment I was writing in my mind. My son had done this. My own son had stolen nearly 4 years from the woman I loved. He had watched her dissolve and smiled and organized her pills and asked about our will. Cold, focused rage settled into my bones alongside the hope. When Ethan came home on Tuesday, nothing would ever be the same again. I just did not know then that he would not wait until Tuesday. I woke Monday morning to a sound I had not heard in 4 years. Bacon sizzling, pans clattering, and my wife's voice humming a melody that stopped my heart. Our wedding song? I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched Catherine move with a confidence I had forgotten she possessed. She cracked eggs into a pan without hesitation. She reached for the salt without searching for it. She turned to greet me with a smile that reached her eyes. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. "I thought I would make your favorite. Remember how you always said my scrambled eggs were better than any restaurant?" I remembered. I had stopped saying it 4 years ago because she had stopped being able to make them. "Catherine," I whispered, "how are you feeling?" She frowned thoughtfully, spatula hovering over the pan. "Different," she said slowly. "Clearer. Like I have been walking through fog for years and suddenly the sun came out. Is that strange? Let me tell you what it feels like to see your wife come back from the dead. To hear her humming your wedding song after 4 years of silence. To watch her crack eggs into a pan like it is the most natural thing in the world, when just a week ago she could not remember where the kitchen was. It feels like a miracle. It feels like proof. And it fills you with a rage so cold and deep that you could tear down mountains with your bare hands. "That is wonderful," I said, my voice cracking. "That is so wonderful." I moved toward her, wanting to hold her, wanting to weep into her shoulder. But then I heard it. A car engine, growing louder, pulling into our driveway. I looked out the window and felt my blood turn to ice. Ethan's black Audi sat in the driveway. 2 days early. "Catherine," I said urgently, act confused again. "Please, just for now." Why would I? The front door opened before I could explain. Ethan walked into the kitchen carrying his briefcase, his cologne announcing him before his footsteps did. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. His mother at the stove. Eggs cooking. The smell of bacon. The normalcy that had been absent from this house for years. "I thought your trip was until Tuesday," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Finished early. Wanted to check on Mom." His eyes swept the kitchen, then fixed on Catherine. "What is going on here?" "Good morning, sweetheart," Catherine said with a warm smile. "I'm making breakfast. Want some eggs?" I watched my son's face cycle through emotions he could not quite hide. Confusion, calculation, and something that looked almost like alarm. "Dad," Ethan said slowly, "Mom seems so different today." He set down his briefcase and moved toward the medication cabinet. I stepped into his path. We stood there in the kitchen, my son and I, with Catherine between us at the stove, oblivious to the war being declared. Ethan's hand was still raised toward the cabinet where he kept her medications. My body blocked his path. His eyes met mine, and I saw the moment he understood. He knew that I knew. The mask of the devoted son flickered. Behind it I glimpsed something I had never seen in my child's face before. Calculation, desperation, and just a flash of something that looked almost like fear. "Is something wrong?" Catherine asked from the stove, her voice light and confused by the sudden tension. "Nothing is wrong," Mom, Ethan said smoothly. "Nothing at all." But his eyes never left mine, and in my pocket my fingers closed around the amber bottle I had kept with me since Thursday night. The evidence of what my son had done. The confrontation I had dreaded was here, but so was the confrontation I had planned for. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the amber bottle, held it up so the morning light caught the torn label. Want to explain this, son? Ethan's face drained white. His hand, still raised toward the medication cabinet, dropped to his side. Where did you get that? He whispered. Your briefcase. Hidden compartment. Very clever. I kept my voice steady, though rage boiled beneath every word. Want to explain why you have been feeding your mother animal tranquilizers for nearly 4 years? Behind me, Catherine gasped. I heard her hand knock against the stove as she steadied herself. Ethan collapsed into a kitchen chair, head dropping into his hands. Sobs shook his shoulders. The devoted son act crumbled into something raw and pathetic. I never meant for it to go this far, he choked out. It started small, just to make her more manageable while you traveled. Manageable. Catherine's voice came from behind me, sharp with horror. I am your mother, Ethan, not a pet to be sedated. I was drowning, Dad. He looked up with tear-streaked cheeks. $325,000 in debt. Failed investments. Creditors calling constantly. My wages garnished. So you decided to poison your mother. I thought if Mom needed more care, if she had to go into a facility. He swallowed hard. Maybe we could work something out with the finances, the house, the investments. Have you ever watched your own child confess to something monstrous and felt your love for them die, not fade, not weaken, die, like a candle being snuffed out? That is what happened in that kitchen. Every word Ethan spoke, every excuse, every justification I felt, another piece of my love for him turned to ash. This was the boy I had carried on my shoulders, the child I had read bedtime stories to, the son I had been so proud of, and he had been slowly poisoning his mother for nearly 4 years while I thanked him for his devotion. I researched it carefully, Ethan continued, as if careful research made it better. Small doses, nothing that would really hurt her, just enough to make her confused, dependent. The smell of burning eggs filled the kitchen. The breakfast Catherine had been cooking forgotten on the stove. I did not move to turn it off, neither did anyone else. You created the illness, I said slowly. You made your mother need the care you were pretending to provide. I was desperate, but as I listened to my son's sobs, something nagged at me. The math did not add up. I looked at him, really looked at him. A man $325,000 in debt does not wear a watch that costs $2,000, even a fake one. A man with garnished wages does not smell like he bathes in $100 cologne every morning. A desperate man scrambling for survival does not carry himself with the smooth confidence Ethan had displayed for months. The tears were real. The confession was real. But something was missing. This was a performance, practiced, calculated vulnerability designed to earn sympathy and limit consequences. Ethan was not telling me everything. I thought about the phone call that had never rung at the doctor's office, the hidden compartment in his briefcase, the sophisticated knowledge of rotating drug dosages. This was not the work of a desperate amateur. Someone had coached him. Someone had planned this with him. Someone with resources and knowledge that my investment manager's son did not possess. My son was not the mastermind of this plot. He was a pawn. And the real enemy was still out there, still hidden, still pulling strings. Who else knows about this? I asked quietly. Ethan's sobs stopped, just for a moment, just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. No one, he said. I acted alone. He was lying. That evening, after the confrontation had settled into uneasy silence, I heard Ethan slip out to the back porch. Through the kitchen window, I saw him pressing his phone to his ear, his voice low and urgent. Something told me to listen. I moved through the darkened kitchen without turning on the lights. The screen door was cracked open just enough for his words to drift inside. Amanda, he knows. Ethan's voice was panicked. He found the bottle. He confronted me. Amanda. A woman's name. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. I never saw Amanda cross that night. I only heard her voice through Ethan's phone, cold and sharp as a surgical blade. But that voice told me everything I needed to know. This was not a woman who loved my son. This was a predator who had found a useful tool. Then fix it. Her voice came through the speakerphone, clear enough for me to hear every word. The will, the power of attorney. We just need a few more months. He is not going to let this go, Ethan said. He has evidence. Then we need to address that, do we not? I want you to understand what it feels like to hear your own murder being planned. Not a violent murder, something worse, a slow erasure of everything you are. They were going to do to me what they had done to Catherine. Turn me into a confused old man no one would believe. Destroy my mind so thoroughly that when I tried to tell the truth, people would shake their heads sadly and talk about dementia running in families. My son was planning to kill me without leaving a single bruise. I need to know, are you still with me after hearing that? If you're still here, please drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still standing by my side as this nightmare unfolds. Your support is the only thing keeping me going through this. A quick word of caution. The following part of my story contains some dramatized elements and creative reflections that may not be entirely factual. If that isn't something you'd like to hear, feel free to stop the video right here. For those staying the truth only gets darker from here. If the father becomes unstable too, Amanda continued, her voice ice cold. Who would believe him? Old man losing his mind just like his wife. Such a tragedy. I do not know if I can... Ethan's voice wavered. It is both of us, or prison, Ethan. Her tone hardened into something that made my blood freeze. You are in too deep to grow a conscience now. The call ended. Ethan stayed on the porch, head in his hands. I stayed in the shadows, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles ached. My son had not done this alone. Amanda. The name burned itself into my memory. She was not just his girlfriend or his accomplice. She was the architect of everything. The one who had researched the drugs. The one who had chosen the target. The one who had turned my son into a weapon against his own family. And now she wanted to point that weapon at me. I thought about Ethan's expensive watch, his designer cologne, his smooth confidence even while drowning in supposed debt. Amanda had been funding him, coaching him, preparing him for exactly this moment. I had thought the worst discovery was learning my son had poisoned his mother. But this was worse. My son had not done this for money or desperation alone. He had done it because someone else had told him to, because he was too weak or too corrupt to say no, because a woman named Amanda had looked at my family and seen nothing but a bank account waiting to be emptied. I was not just fighting my son anymore. I was fighting something far more dangerous, and I needed help. I needed my daughter. I needed Lily, but I did not know yet that Lily had secrets of her own. I called my daughter at midnight, something I had never done in her 37 years. Lily, I need you to come home. It is about your brother and your mother. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said, I will be on the first flight. Lily Brennan stepped off the plane Tuesday afternoon, looking exhausted with her mother's determined jaw and her father's analytical eyes. She was a healthcare policy analyst who spent her days navigating hospital bureaucracies, and now she was facing a family crisis that no policy could solve. Mom, Lily whispered when she walked into the kitchen and saw Catherine standing at the counter, clear-eyed and alert. You are yourself again. Come sit down, sweetheart, I said. There's a lot to tell you. I told her everything. The veterinary diazepam, the hidden compartment, the pill swap, Catherine's recovery, Ethan's partial confession, and the phone call with Amanda. But before I could finish, Lily made her own confession. 6 months ago, she said, her voice breaking, I found a text on Mom's phone. It said, "Stop asking questions. Trust Ethan." I thought it was strange, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Why did you not tell me? I do not know. Lily wiped her eyes. I wanted to believe the best about Ethan. I told myself it was nothing. I deleted the text and flew back to Boston. Here is what guilt does to a family. It builds walls. Lily had spent 6 months carrying the weight of that text message, convincing herself she had done the right thing by ignoring it. I had spent 4 years traveling for work, trusting my son to care for my wife. Catherine had spent those same years trapped in a fog, unable to articulate what was being done to her. We had all failed each other in different ways, and now we sat in our living room, 3 survivors of a war we had not known we were fighting, trying to figure out how to win before the enemy destroyed us completely. I'm so sorry, Dad. Lily reached for my hand. If I had said something sooner, you could not have known, I said. None of us could. But there was more I needed to tell her. There's someone else involved, I said. Ethan has a partner. I heard him on the phone with her last night. Her name is Amanda. Lily's head snapped up. Amanda who? I do not know her last name. Just Amanda. Describe her voice. What did she sound like? Cold. Calculating. Like she was running a business, not planning a crime. The color drained from Lily's face. She went pale in a way I had never seen before. Amanda Cross. You know her? Lily's hands were shaking. I heard Ethan mention someone named Amanda about a year ago. He said she was helping him with some investment stuff, but the way he talked about her, it was not like a business partner. It was like someone who had him completely under control. She pulled out her phone, fingers trembling. We need to find out who she really is, Lily said. Because if she is who I think she is, this is not the first time she has done something like this. And it will not be the last. If that is who I think it is, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. We are dealing with someone far more dangerous than Ethan. We huddled around Lily's laptop that night, searching for a predator. Coffee grew cold. Hours disappeared. The house was silent except for the clicking of keys. What we found would keep us awake until dawn. The search results loaded at 2 a.m, and what we found made Lily grip my arm so hard her nails left marks. Amanda Cross was not just a con artist. She was a convicted predator with a trail of destroyed lives behind her. California, 2016. Elder fraud. She had conned an elderly couple out of $150,000 using manipulation tactics eerily similar to what she was doing to us now. The article included her booking photo, cold eyes, a slight smile, the face of a woman who saw other people as nothing more than opportunities. Wednesday morning, Lily and I sat in the office of Benjamin Aldridge. He had the kind of practice that smelled of old leather and older books, 58 years old with silver temples and the measured voice of a man who had spent 3 decades fighting for people who could not fight for themselves. This constitutes serious felonies, Aldridge said, reviewing the evidence we had brought. Elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly attempted murder. What do we need to prove it? Medical documentation, blood tests showing systematic drugging, expert testimony. He looked up from the files. And Mr. Brennan. His eyes met mine. This will destroy your son's life. Are you prepared for that? Let me tell you what it costs to do the right thing. Benjamin Aldridge charged $400 an hour. The blood tests cost another $3,000. But the real price was not measured in money. It was measured in the look on my daughter's face when I signed that retainer, in the knowledge that every step forward was a step toward destroying my own son. In the sleepless nights, wondering if there was any other way, there was not. I had tried to find one. But some crimes cannot be forgiven. Some betrayals cannot be repaired. Some sons cannot be saved. Thursday, Catherine underwent comprehensive blood testing at St. Catherine Medical Center. Afterward, I found Dr. Hayes in his office and asked the question that had haunted me since that first warning. Why did you risk your career to warn me? Hayes's face darkened. He stared at his hands for a long moment. 5 years ago, he said quietly, I saw the same pattern. Son-in-law drugging his mother-in-law, I suspected, but stayed quiet. Did not want to destroy a family over suspicion. What happened? She died. His voice broke. Autopsy showed benzodiazepines combined with anticholinergics, mimicking Alzheimer's progression. I swore I would never stay silent again. Friday afternoon, Hayes called me back to the hospital. The results confirmed systematic poisoning, he said, handing me 15 pages of medical documentation. Diazepam, 5 milligrams daily, for months to years. This report will stand up in any court. Your son will not be able to deny the science. I held that evidence in my hands. 15 pages of proof that my son had systematically poisoned his mother. Proof that would send him to prison. Proof that could not be argued with or explained away. Dr. Hayes had given me everything I needed to destroy Ethan and Amanda, and whatever twisted partnership they had built on my wife's suffering. But as I walked out of the hospital that Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. The message was simple. We know what you are doing. Back off, or Catherine is not the only one who will suffer. I stood in the parking lot, phone cold in my hand, and felt the world shift beneath my feet. Someone was watching. Someone knew we were building a case, and they were not going to let us finish without a fight. I had the evidence. I had the attorney. I had the medical proof. But the enemy knew I was coming, and they had just made this personal. By Saturday morning, I had become the villain of Maple Grove Avenue, the man who accused his own son of poisoning his wife. The neighbors I had known for 20 years now crossed the street to avoid me. Someone had leaked my accusations. The threatening text had been just the beginning. Now the entire neighborhood knew that Marcus Brennan was making wild claims against his devoted son. I watched from my front porch as curtains twitched and heads turned away. The Hendersons, who had borrowed my lawnmower every summer for a decade, suddenly found their shoes fascinating when I waved. Mrs. Patterson, who used to bring us Christmas cookies, hurried her grandchildren past our house like we were contagious. At the corner grocery store that afternoon, I ran into George Thompson loading groceries into his trunk. George and I had played golf together every other Saturday for 15 years. We had celebrated each other's retirements. His wife had knitted Catherine a blanket during her cancer treatments. "George?" I called out, raising my hand in greeting. He saw me. I know he saw me. Our eyes met across the parking lot for one brief moment. Then he closed his trunk with deliberate focus, climbed into his car, and drove away without a word. The deliberate avoidance cut deeper than any accusation could have. By evening, 3 neighbors had called Catherine to check on her, their voices dripping with concern that felt more like suspicion. One even suggested I might be the one experiencing cognitive decline, not her. Then Doris Kendrick marched across the street. Doris was 68 years old and had appointed herself the conscience of Maple Grove Avenue for 3 decades. She organized the block parties, tracked every birth and death, and delivered judgment on family matters, with the certainty of a woman who had never doubted herself. "Marcus Brennan." She planted herself on my walkway, arms crossed. "I heard what you were saying about Ethan. Doris, this is a family matter. Ethan volunteers at the senior center every Tuesday." She continued as if I had not spoken. "He brings Catherine flowers. He is devoted. Maybe the stress has affected you, Marcus. Have you considered seeing someone? Have you ever stood in your own front yard and felt like a stranger? Have you ever looked into the eyes of people you have known for decades and seen only suspicion? That is what betrayal looks like. When it wears your son's face and speaks with your neighbor's voice. I have evidence, Doris. Evidence of that your son cares for his mother." She shook her head with theatrical sadness. "We are all worried about you, Marcus. This is not healthy." She walked away before I could respond. I stood alone on my front lawn, feeling the weight of 20 years of neighborhood goodwill evaporating around me. Inside, Catherine was waiting. She had heard everything through the open window. "Look at me," she said, squeezing my hand with a strength I had not felt in years. Her eyes were clear, focused, present. "I'm awake. I can think. I can remember our grandchildren's birthdays. I can finish crossword puzzles. That is proof you are not crazy." I held her hand and felt something crack open in my chest. Not despair, relief. My wife was back, and she believed me. That evening, Hal Pemberton knocked on our door. He carried a thermos of coffee and the quiet solidarity of a man who had seen worse things than neighborhood gossip. "Heard you had visitors today," he said, settling into the kitchen chair across from me. Doris and George both made their opinions clear. They all think I have lost my mind. Hal poured coffee into 2 cups. "Of course they do. Ethan has been playing the devoted son for nearly 4 years. You have been playing the absent husband. Which story is easier to believe?" The coffee was bitter. The truth was worse. "The hardest part is standing alone when everyone looks away," Hal said quietly. "But you are not alone, Marcus." He paused, and something dark flickered in his old detective's eyes. "I have seen this playbook before. The character assassination always comes right before they make their move. Whatever Ethan and his partner are planning, it is coming soon, and it will not be subtle." I looked at my wife clear-eyed and holding my hand, at Hal steady and certain. The neighborhood had turned against me, but I was not alone, and I was ready for whatever came next. I heard the coat closet door slam before I saw him. Ethan stood in the kitchen doorway, Benjamin Aldridge's business card pinched between his fingers like evidence at a crime scene. His face had gone white. "You hired an elder abuse attorney," he said. "You are actually going to do this." The move I had been braced for was here. But it was not the move I expected. "The bottle is gone." Ethan continued, his voice tight. "I checked everywhere. Where is it?" I photographed everything. I kept my voice steady, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. The bottle, the label, the veterinary dosage. It is all documented with timestamps. Something flickered across his face. Calculation. Then he forced a smile. "Here." He moved to the counter, poured water into a glass, and slid it toward me. "Let us talk about this like adults, like family. Let me tell you what it feels like to watch your son try to poison you. Time does not slow down. There is no moment of clarity. There is only the glass of water sitting on the counter between you and the terrible understanding that the child you raised would watch you drink it." I did not reach for the glass. "Marcus N.O." Catherine's scream came from the doorway. She stood there, clear-eyed and alert, pointing at the glass with a shaking finger. "Do not drink that. I saw him put something in it." Ethan's face twisted. "Mom, you do not know what you are talking about. You are confused." "I am not confused anymore." Catherine's voice was stronger than I had heard it in years. "That is the problem, is it not, Ethan? I am not confused anymore. I have been recording for the last 10 minutes. Lily stepped out from the hallway, phone held steady in her hand. The screen glowed in the dim kitchen light. Every word, Ethan, every single word. My son looked at his sister, then at his mother, then at me. I watched something collapse behind his eyes. The smooth confidence, the practiced charm, the devoted son mask that had fooled everyone for nearly 4 years. It all crumbled at once. He sank into a kitchen chair and dropped his head into his hands. His shoulders shook. "You do not understand," he said, his voice breaking. "None of you understand." "Then make us understand," I said. "Tell us the truth. Amanda has recordings of me." The name hung in the air like smoke. "Things I did years ago." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Fraud. Worse. When I started working with her, she was helping me cover my tracks. Then she started collecting evidence, building a file. She has everything. So she blackmailed you into poisoning your mother." Ethan looked up at me with eyes I no longer recognized. "If I go down, she releases everything. She owns me." He swallowed hard. "She has been planning this for years, Dad. The poisoning was just part of it. She wanted the house, the investments, everything, and she made sure I could never say no." Catherine moved to stand beside me. Lily lowered her phone but kept recording. "Where is she now?" I asked. "I do not know. She disappears for weeks at a time. But she is watching. She always knows." Ethan sat crumpled in the kitchen chair, a broken man confessing to a room full of people who had once loved him. "She is coming for all of us, Dad." He looked up at me with something that might have been fear or might have been warning. "Amanda does not leave witnesses." The kitchen fell silent. Outside, a car engine started somewhere down the street. We had found our enemy, but our enemy had been watching us the entire time. Detective Rosa Torres spread 15 photographs across her desk at the Thurston County Sheriff's Department. Medical records, bank statements, a veterinary prescription with Ethan Brennan's forged signature, and emails dated 24 years before the poisoning began showing Amanda Cross researching the Brennan family's net worth. Torres was 42 years old and had spent 15 years in the department. She had seen every kind of family crime, but the Brennan case made her stomach turn. She had a son Ethan's age. She understood what I was about to lose. "These emails go back to 2020, Torres said, tapping her screen. "Amanda Cross researched your family's property value, Catherine's medical history, your retirement accounts. She was hunting before Ethan ever met her. My son was targeted. Your son was recruited." Torres looked at me with steady eyes. "There is a difference. One makes him a victim. The other makes him a co-conspirator. Right now, he is both. The arrest warrants were issued Wednesday morning. You think you want justice until you see it arrive. You think you are prepared until your son drops to his knees on your front lawn flowers, scattering like confetti at a funeral, and begs you to save him from the consequences of his own choices. Justice does not feel like victory. Justice feels like watching your family die in slow motion while the neighbors film it on their phones." Ethan came up the walkway carrying roses, Catherine's favorite. He did not see the unmarked car parked across the street, did not notice Torres and 2 officers stepping out of our house. "Ethan Brennan Torres announced you are under arrest for attempted murder elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The flowers hit the ground, pink petals scattered across the grass. Daddy, please? Ethan's voice cracked as they pulled his arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Please do not let them take me. I am still your son. Catherine gripped my arm so hard I felt her nails through my sleeve. That is my baby boy, she whispered. Tears streamed down her face. That is my baby boy in handcuffs. Across town, Amanda Cross was being arrested at her downtown apartment. I learned later that she answered the door in silk pajamas with an expression of mild inconvenience, as if the officers had interrupted her morning coffee rather than ended a 4-year criminal conspiracy. The neighbors watched from their windows. Doris Kendrick stood on her porch, arms crossed, face unreadable. The same people who had called me crazy 48 hours ago now watched in silence as my son was loaded into the back of a police car. I love you, Dad. Ethan's face was pressed against the window as the car pulled away. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I could not speak, could not move, could only watch as the car turned the corner and disappeared. Catherine collapsed against me, her body shaking with sobs. I held her the way I had held her through cancer treatments. Through miscarriages, through every crisis, our marriage had survived. But this was different. This was our child, our son. We did the right thing, she whispered into my chest. Why does it feel like we lost everything? I had no answer. I held my wife and watched Doris Kendrick close her curtains. The neighbors were already rewriting history, already deciding they had suspected Ethan all along. But there was one thing none of us knew yet. One piece of evidence Torres had not shared. 3 days later, I would learn that Ethan had not only poisoned his mother, he had been poisoning me, too. In the silence that followed Ethan's arrest, the adrenaline that had been keeping me upright finally evaporated. The headaches I'd dismissed as stress for the last 8 months surged into a blinding fog. I stood in the bathroom and realized I couldn't remember my daughter's middle name. It wasn't a sudden onset. The symptoms had been there lurking in the margins of my exhaustion, but I'd been too focused on Catherine to notice my own foundation was crumbling. Grief. The weight of watching your child taken away in handcuffs. Lily arrived that afternoon and saw through me immediately. Dad, look at me, she said, her voice sharp with fear. Your hands are shaking. You forgot what day it was twice this morning. You just asked me where Mom was when she is sitting right there. I glanced at Catherine in her armchair by the window, reading peacefully. I had asked where she was. I did not remember. These symptoms, Lily whispered, gripping my arm so tightly I could feel each finger pressing into my skin. Dad, these are exactly like Mom used to be. Before she got better. Before we stopped the pills. The words hit me like ice water. I had been so focused on saving Catherine that I never considered I might need saving too. The morning coffee Ethan prepared so thoughtfully. The evening water he always poured. The weekend whiskey he insisted we share. Every act of seeming kindness now twisted into something monstrous. Do you know what it feels like to discover you have been a prisoner in your own body? To learn that every moment of confusion you blamed on age, every headache you attributed to stress, every time you walked into a room and forgot why was not weakness, but warfare. My son had been erasing me 1 cup of coffee at a time. 2 hours later, I sat in Dr. Victor Hayes' office at Street, Catherine Medical Center, fluorescent lights humming overhead, watching him spread blood test results across his desk, like evidence at a crime scene, which I suppose they were. The blood work does not lie, he said, his clinical voice carrying weight I had never heard before. Diazepam metabolites, 2 to 3 milligrams daily for approximately 6 to 8 months. In your coffee, your water, your whiskey, anything you consumed regularly. 6 to 8 months. While I had been investigating my son for poisoning my wife, he had been poisoning me. The bitter taste of this morning's coffee lingered on my tongue. Phantom evidence of betrayal. Lily sat beside me, her perfume the only familiar comfort in that sterile room. Her hand found mine as the diagnosis settled over us like a shroud. Will he recover? She asked. The brain is resilient, Hayes replied carefully. We have seen Catherine's improvement. But at your father's age, with this duration of exposure, some effects may linger. I studied my trembling hands. Those architects' hands that had once drawn buildings meant to stand for centuries. Were they shaking from drugs leaving my system, or from understanding what my son had done? Hayes closed the folder and looked at me with something I had never seen in his professional eyes: fear. "He did not just attack your mother," he said grimly. "He was systematically dismantling both of you. 6 more months at this dosage, and you would have shown signs of dementia. A year and you would have needed full-time care." He paused. "How long before you were both in care facilities and he controlled everything?" I sat in silence, processing the mathematics of my own destruction. My son had not just betrayed us. He had been methodically erasing us from our own lives, and the trial that would determine his fate was only weeks away. 2 weeks after my son's arrest, the neighborhood finally believed me, not because of the evidence, not because of the medical records or the police reports. They believed me because I had been a victim too. Apparently, watching a man lose his wife to poison was not enough. They needed to witness the truth themselves before they would believe that evil had lived among them. The trial was 3 weeks away, and I was still processing Dr. Hayes's words about my own poisoning. 8 months of fog, 8 months of headaches I blamed on stress, 8 months of my son methodically erasing me while I focused on saving Catherine. Doris Kendrick appeared on my porch that Wednesday morning, her eyes red-rimmed, and her hands clutching a casserole dish like a peace offering. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling, "when I heard you were drugged too, I realized how calculated this was. I defended him. I told people you were the problem. I am so deeply sorry." What do you say to a woman who defended your son while he poisoned your wife? What words exist for accepting an apology from someone who called you paranoid while your child was slowly erasing you? Looked at Doris standing on my porch, autumn air carrying the scent of decaying leaves, and realized there is no protocol for this. No script, just 2 broken people trying to find language for the unspeakable. "Thank you for coming," I said finally. The words tasted like ash. That afternoon, I sat in Benjamin Aldridge's leather-scented office while he spread documents across his mahogany desk. The attorney's silver reading glasses reflected the afternoon light as he delivered updates with professional precision. "The judge denied bail this morning," Aldridge said. "Flight risk, severity of charges. The prosecution is adding attempted murder for the poisoning of both victims." Both victims. The phrase still felt foreign. I had spent so long being Catherine's protector that accepting my own victimhood required a mental adjustment I had not yet completed. Amanda Cross is fighting extradition from King County," Aldridge continued. "Her attorney claims she was also a victim of Ethan's manipulation. It will not work, but it will delay proceedings." I sipped bitter coffee and listened to the legal machinery grinding toward justice. Aldridge's voice was steady, reassuring, the voice of a man who had seen the worst of human behavior and learned to process it through paperwork and procedure. The letter arrived that evening. Catherine found it in the mailbox, her hand trembling as she brought it inside. "A letter came," she said quietly, holding the envelope like it might burn her. "From the jail," his handwriting. I recognized Ethan's penmanship immediately. The same hand that had written birthday cards and Christmas letters. The same hand that had measured poison into my coffee. The envelope was cheap, jail stationery. It smelled faintly of industrial cleaning chemicals and desperation. I tore it open, the paper rough between my fingers, and found a single sheet inside. 2 words: "I'm sorry." I read them again and again, searching for meaning, for remorse, for the son I had raised somewhere in those inadequate letters. Catherine's hand found mine, her grip tight, grounding me. Sorry could not give Catherine back 4 years of her life. Sorry could not erase the fog that had clouded my own mind for 8 months. Sorry could not restore what had been stolen or rebuild what had been destroyed. I set the letter on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. The trial was in 3 weeks. I would see my son across a courtroom facing charges that could imprison him for decades. And I still did not know if I wanted justice or just answers. Perhaps they were the same thing. Perhaps they were not. Monday, December 2nd. I walked into Thurston County Superior Court, still wondering whether I wanted justice or answers. 3 weeks of sleepless nights had not resolved that question. The courtroom was packed with neighbors, journalists, and strangers who had come to witness a family destroy itself in public. I saw my son for the first time since the arrest. Ethan sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit thinner than I remembered. When our eyes met, he looked away first. Amanda Cross sat beside him, composed and cold, watching the proceedings like a spectator at someone else's tragedy. Dr. Hayes took the stand first. His clinical voice filled the courtroom as he detailed the medical evidence. The blood work confirms veterinary-grade diazepam in both victims, he testified. Mrs. Brennan received doses for approximately 4 years. Mr. Brennan for 6 to 8 months. The damage was systematic and deliberate. Catherine's hand found mine on the hard wooden bench. I could smell the stale courthouse coffee, the nervous sweat of spectators, Amanda's expensive perfume cutting through it all. Then Clayton Park rose to cross-examine. The defense attorney, 48 years old, had built his reputation defending the indefensible. He wore a $3,000 suit and a smile that never reached his eyes, approaching cross-examination like a surgeon approaches amputation, precise, clinical, and utterly without mercy. Is it not true? Mr. Brennan, Park asked, trying to distract the jury with my past absences, that you prioritized work over your son. Objection. Irrelevant. Benjamin Aldridge's voice cut through the room, and the judge sustained it instantly. Have you ever had your life reduced to bullet points? By a stranger in a suit, Park stood before the jury and painted a picture of a father who chose work over his son. He did not mention the hospital bills, the second mortgage, the nights I sat beside Catherine's bed wondering if she would survive to see Ethan turn 8. He took sacrifice and called it abandonment, and for one terrible moment I wondered if my son believed him. Catherine had cancer when Ethan was 7. I said, my voice steady despite the bitter taste of suppressed rage. I worked double shifts to pay medical bills that would have bankrupted us. Every extra hour I worked was to keep my family alive. The courtroom shifted. Park's confident expression flickered. The jury watched with new understanding. Then Ethan stood. Amanda made me rewrite my childhood, he said, ignoring his attorney's objections. Tears streamed down his face. She spent months convincing me my parents never loved me, that they resented me. She poisoned my mind before we ever touched the pills. Sit down, Amanda hissed, her composure cracking for the first time, but Ethan continued, his voice breaking. She told me my father chose work over me, that my mother's illness was an excuse to push me away. She turned every memory into evidence of neglect. By the time she suggested the pills, I already hated them. She made me hate them first. The courtroom fell silent. Amanda sat frozen, her mask finally shattered. I looked at my son standing in his orange jumpsuit, tears streaming down his face, and I finally understood. Amanda's greatest crime was not the money. It was not even the poison. Her greatest crime was stealing my son's love. She had taken his memories of birthday parties and bedtime stories and baseball games and twisted them into evidence of neglect. She had turned gratitude into resentment. She had attacked the very bonds holding our family together before she ever touched a pill bottle. I sat in the packed courtroom, Catherine's hand tightened mine, and realized the man I had wanted to destroy was also a victim. Not innocent, never innocent, but manipulated in ways I was only beginning to understand. The trial would continue. Justice would be served. But the question of forgiveness had just become infinitely more complicated. Tuesday morning, the question of forgiveness still unanswered, my wife walked to the witness stand to testify against our son. Catherine moved slowly, deliberately, each step, a declaration that she had survived what he had done to her. She wore the blue dress from our 40th anniversary. I had not asked her to. She had chosen it herself, a reminder of who she was before the fog, before the pills, before our son tried to erase her. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and began. For nearly 4 years, Catherine testified, her voice steady. I lost myself. I forgot my grandchildren's names. I forgot our anniversary. I forgot how to read books I had loved for decades. My son did that to me. My son and the woman who controlled him. I watched Ethan's face crumble as she spoke. The woman he had tried to erase stood before him, clear-eyed and articulate, recounting every moment of confusion he had caused. Her recovery was his condemnation. Her clarity was his punishment. Catherine continued for 20 minutes. Every lost memory, every moment of terror when she could not remember her own name, every night she had cried without knowing why. The courtroom sat in absolute silence, and I tasted salt from tears I had not realized were falling. What do you do with a child who tried to kill you? What words exist for the moment when your son stands in a courtroom and admits he poisoned you for money? There is no greeting card for this, no chapter in any parenting book. There is only the gavel waiting to fall and the numbers about to be read aloud, numbers that cannot restore what was stolen but somehow have to be enough. When Catherine finished, Ethan stood. "I want to change my plea," he said, his voice breaking. "I plead guilty to everything. I was weak, I was greedy, I was selfish, and I let someone convince me that my parents deserved to suffer." The judge accepted his plea. The sentencing came swift and final. "Ethan Brennan, you are sentenced to 9 years in state prison." The judge noted his partial cooperation against Amanda Cross and the documented psychological coercion she had used. "Amanda Cross, you are sentenced to 12 years. The gavel struck. The numbers hung in the air. 9 years. 12 years. Arithmetic that could never balance the equation of what we had lost. They led Ethan toward the side door. He paused, turned, and found my eyes across the courtroom. His lips moved. "I'm sorry." I looked at my son, at the man who had poisoned his mother for nearly 4 years, who had poisoned me for 8 months, who had been manipulated by a predator, but had still made choices. Terrible choices. "Goodbye, son," I whispered back. I meant it, not as rejection, as release. The son I had raised was gone, replaced by someone who would have to earn his way back over 9 years of therapy and reflection. The goodbye was not closure. It was acknowledgement that healing required separation first. Amanda screamed about appeals as they took her away. I did not look at her. She had already taken enough of my attention. We walked out of the courthouse into the December sunlight, the three of us. Catherine on my arm, alert and alive and herself again. Lily beside us, the daughter who had fought to save her parents. The cold air hit our faces like a promise. "We survived," Catherine said, simply squeezing my hand. I looked at my wife, at my daughter, at the December sky stretching above us. We had lost a son to prison. We had lost nearly 4 years to poison. We had lost the family we thought we were, but we had not lost each other. In the wreckage of betrayal, that had to be enough. Now we had to learn how to live again. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize how easily love can blind us. I trusted my son simply because he was my son, and that trust almost cost my wife her mind and my own life. If there is one lesson I carry from this experience, it is this: when something feels wrong inside your own home, do not ignore it. Family betrayal often hides behind familiar faces, and family betrayal can grow quietly if we refuse to question what we see. I once believed our home was unbreakable, but family betrayal taught me that even the strongest bonds require courage and honesty to protect. At the same time, I learned that seeking family justice is painful but necessary. Family justice does not mean hatred. It means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. In the end, family justice was the only path that allowed my wife and daughter to rebuild our lives. Through all of this, I believe God placed the right people in my path at the right moment. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. Please share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's situation? I would truly value hearing your perspective. If this story moved you, consider subscribing so you don't miss future stories. A gentle note: while inspired by real-world themes like elder abuse and family manipulation, some elements were dramatized for storytelling. If this story isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that may suit you better.